How's it going, guys? Welcome back to my F122 My Team career. This is part 5 of our first season in Formula One, and we are heading to the United States for the Miami Grand Prix for the first time. As a proclaimed American-based team, this is going to be our first opportunity to really show up in the States and show what we have to offer. We're coming off of a very disappointing outing at Imola, where we have a lot of failure in the sprint race, followed up by some exciting puntering by the current reigning world champion Max Verstappen, who decided that our day was done nice and early. So unfortunately for us, that was it for us. As we are currently making our way through the week, we see a couple of R&D points come home. We see a couple of need addressing as our gearbox improved materials fails, unfortunately. So we will, I believe, get that restarted and ensure that it's here before Barcelona in the following Grand Prix. Other than that, we're going to take a look and see what else we could potentially do for upgrades. We really need to keep pushing on these upgrades just because we have both a skill issue as well as a car issue, because boy, do we have a long way to go, as we currently sit third in the R&D chart, and we have a long way to go. And Aston Martin is not that far behind. As we take a current look at the driver standings, we see that we are currently sitting tied for P11 in the driver standings, as well as 1 point behind AlphaTauri in the constructors. Not that we're really pushing for either championship this season, but it is nice to, get that figured out as we finally get an opportunity to put a new sponsor on the car. Welcome High Knight to the car is going to be going on our rear wing. We're hoping to be able to add plenty more sponsorships in the future, but for now, what a great looking car, the fantastic looking color scheme, and we cannot wait to bring these bright colors to Miami. We're going to also go ahead and take a look at the facility upgrades. We do have a little over $2 million just kind of burning away in our bank account, and we definitely want an opportunity to upgrade our facilities as quickly as possible to generate more R&D points, generate faster builds, quality control, personnel upgrades as well. These are all of the things that a good Formula One team needs. As we're kind of taking a peek around at what we're looking at, we're eyeing up all of our options. Let's see what we end up going with. I believe that we end up going with the activities management upgrade here to get some more positive impacts from team activities, just because we really need to keep morale up as we continue on in the season. As we head to our first outing on the Miami GP track around the Hard Rock Stadium, we actually jump ahead towards the end of our Pirelli hot lap, just because it's just a few minutes of going around the Miami GP track a couple of times. We end up cutting it fairly close here as we break down this final hairpin, make it nice and smooth as we head down these last couple of corners to finish off our gold medal in the Pirelli hot lap to take home $100,000 for free, as well as a free 1,000 acclaim, which goes a long way when if you're getting 1,000 every week for just driving around in street cars pretty quickly, we will take those. As we immediately will jump forward to our qualifying session. We are heading out on our first flying lap. We currently are suffering from a bit of an impatience problem from the driver, who insists on doing quick practices instead of doing at least one session to get some time in around the track. So we will see some less than ideal lines, some less than ideal braking points, but nonetheless, we are here in our qualifying session doing our best to find our way around this Miami street circuit. Or I don't know if you can call it a street circuit since it's in a parking lot, but this standalone man-made track around the Hard Rock Stadium. We are going to do our best to position ourselves for Sunday's Grand Prix. We currently are running around in last, but as you can see, our delta, we are about a second up on our personal best and in moving up the field as we come into this tight little uphill chicane, trying not to damage anything too much coming down this final bend towards the long back straight. We find ourselves about a 1 1/4 seconds up on our delta, which is what we love to see. And another thing that I need to get better at is not settling for qualifying times too quickly in the session and then running out of time at the end to set a better one. I didn't realize that the track dynamics would change so much across the course of qualifying to the point of it really making huge differences. So as we look here and start our second flying lap, we currently sit in P21, only beating Nicholas Latifi and on the grid. Something that I'm looking to move forward to in the future, which will probably come in a few episodes from now, is actually moving to a full qualifying session. So instead of doing just short qualifying, actually moving to doing a full qualifying session with Q1, Q2, and Q3. Not that we're really fighting for Q2 or Q3 at this point, but I think it's a interesting way to see qualifying and actually get some of those surprise placements that you kind of miss out on in one-shot qualifying or short qualifying. That's something we'll definitely be looking forward to doing in the future. Another thing that I am looking to do here in a few episodes is actually start to work some of these assists off. So if you didn't know, at this point I am still trying to get used to F1 as a game. So we're running with full traction control, automatic gears, automatic DRS deployment, automatic battery deployment, and it is working well to kind of get a grip on the basics. But pretty soon here we need to start taking advantage of manually shifting gears, manually handling DRS and ERS, as well as turning the traction control at least down to try and get the most out of our position. So as we finish up our lap, we end up qualifying currently in P4, and this is where the big mistake I make happens, where we actually end up down in P21, unfortunately, just because I did not go out and complete another lap towards the end of the session, and our time ends up not holding up as I thought it would when we were currently sitting in P4 finishing the lap. So our teammate Enzo Fittipaldi ends up right above us, qualifying in P20, and we sit in P21, only above Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. So for the first time, I believe, in this series, at least that we're going to see, this is where we are going to take advantage of starting in the back of the grid. But taking advantage of starting in the back of the grid, we will take a series of grid penalties, and we will be getting an entirely fresh power unit, basically in every component. Just because if you're going to start in P21, what's the difference in starting in P22 and getting another new column of engine components that will all just stack up into a single penalty? So here we go.
Welcome to the Miami International Autodrome, home of the Miami Grand Prix. This exciting track circumnavigates the Hard Rock Stadium, home to the National Football League outfit, the Miami Dolphins. A lap of the Miami Grand Prix features 3.36 miles of track around the Hard Rock Stadium, and 19 corners make up the Miami International Autodrome, which will challenge the drivers in a tight wheel-to-wheel race. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday, and it's put him on pole. And the smooth operator Carlos Sainz completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Hamilton, George Russell, and Perez, Fernando Alonso, Norris, Bottas, and Kevin Magnussen, Mick Schumacher, Ocon,
right behind,
Pierre Gasly, and Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Zhou, Sebastian Vettel, and Alex Albon, Stroll, Fittipaldi, Latifi. They've taken a grid penalty, and the rookie. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box. Ant, it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
As we line up to begin the formation lap for the Miami Grand Prix, we start 22nd on the grid due to engine penalties. A chosen engine penalty, but an engine penalty nonetheless, as we will talk about our goals for this Miami Grand Prix. First and foremost, it's going to be finishing the race. It's going to be not having any major scandals, as we are taking this as our first claimed, not necessarily home Grand Prix, as I believe the Circuit of the Americas later in the season will truly be our home Grand Prix. This will be our first instance of showing our U.S. supporters some love as they travel to Miami to support us, I'm sure, without any doubts that they are doing so. And so our goal is going to be finishing the race, trying to secure as many positions as possible and try and put on a good show. As you know, with this car, we're not quite fighting for wins or podiums, but we are going to be putting on a good show. So as we line up to 5 red lights, let's get ready to get the Miami Grand Prix underway. As the 5 red lights are on, they are out, and the Miami Grand Prix is underway as we get a decent start as the rest of the pack kind of bunches up. We don't really see too many opportunities to send one completely down the inside, really pushing the limits defined by track limits. But nonetheless, we decided to make a huge gamble towards the inside, and we actually make up about 5 positions in the first corner. Really probably should have been pushing the definition of track limits there as we take one completely up the inside of Alex Albon and wind up sitting behind Pierre Gasly. As we take a look to the inside but probably hesitate a little too much, we are unable to really put a good move in at that point, so we have to settle in and defend against Albon, who takes advantage of our hesitation coming out of that long sweeping left to make it a bit of an attack on us, but we actually managed to hold him off down this mini straight coming down to this little switchback chicane. As Albon takes a peek up the inside himself, we kind of catch back up to the main group. Not looking to make any drastic moves, we're just trying to hold position, keep momentum, as we take a bit of a look around the outside of Pierre Gasly and end up kind of pushing him towards the inside. We actually take some underbody damage because Pierre refuses to back out at our move, and that actually prompts a virtual safety car on the first lap of the Miami Grand Prix. We do make a bit of a risky move around the outside of Pierre, but we saw an opening to kind of take the outside. Pierre, we tried to close the door a little bit, which could be interpreted as us not leaving the space, but nonetheless, we make a move. He actually damages our side pods and underbody, and it prompts a virtual safety car, I'm sure, from front wing damage or some other type of damage from Pierre, who ends up dropping well back. As the virtual safety car comes to an end, and we start our second lap, we are going to be fighting with this underbody damage for the rest of these 29 laps in Miami. So hopefully nothing goes too wrong and we're able to put together a clean race and potentially try and make up some time in the future. As we jump forward a few laps, we see others have pitted already for damage, including Carlos Sainz, who's currently sitting about 1.3 seconds behind us as we are chasing Zhou Guanyu around this Miami circuit, and we are at this point having to fend off Carlos Sainz as long as we can, while also knowing that as soon as he gets his run on us, we will have to let him by, because that Ferrari is no joke in this game, and our car is in 0 position to be fighting a Ferrari in any position on this circuit. So we are going to hold him back for as long as we can as we try and make our way past Zhou Guanyu up towards Daniel Ricciardo, while also knowing that eventually at some point we will have to not necessarily let Sainz by, but he will be going around us, and that will hopefully give us an opportunity to slow up Zhou Guanyu as well as Daniel Ricciardo in front of us and open up some potential possibilities for us in the future. But for now, as Carlos makes up quite a bit of time on this back straight with that Ferrari powered car. It is quite the machine, to say the least. And here's where we truly get to see, I believe, the beginning of the underbody damage really holding us back on these straights, as we really just cannot get the same giddy up and go as this Alfa Romeo or the McLaren, and definitely not the Ferrari currently hounding us from behind, as Sainz is currently just biding his time trying to make his attack on us. But nonetheless, we currently sit in P15, and after starting P22, we will take this every day of the week. So far, it's been a relatively clean race outside of that little scrap in lap 1 with Gasly in the AlphaTauri. But nonetheless, currently sitting P15 is something we will take all day long, as I believe Sainz here finally makes his move. We'll leave him plenty of space to go around, and at this point we are just hoping that we will be able to be dragged along by Sainz on our way back up towards Zhou Guanyu and Daniel Ricciardo, and kind of also hoping that maybe one of them will be, you know, a little more foolish enough to try and battle with this Ferrari vehicle, trying to you know, hold position, as we actually hit a little late on the brakes and actually take some front wing damage from Carlos Sainz. Unfortunate, very, very late on the brakes, and just very poor reaction time by us. And so now we have a difficult decision to make, and we actually end up going to elect to not pit for damage and kind of wait for our normal pit window, as we, you know, we're taking a look at this gap behind us, this almost 4-second gap to Sebastian Vettel behind, and taking an idea that maybe Sainz will hold up Zhou Guanyu enough to kind of let us make a move and kind of put ourselves in a better position. Will it work out in the long run? We are not sure. We are going to hope so, but nonetheless, it's the decision that we went for, and it will be dealt with eventually. Unfortunately, we will be dealing with both underbody damage as well as front wing damage, which will put us in a severe disadvantage both on the straights and now in the corners. But as we are nearing our pit window anyway, running on these mediums, we see an opportunity to try and hold with the pack and not drop too far back due to an early pit stop. And I am not confident in my skills to make a pair of hard tires last, you know, a full 20 laps, as at this point we've decided that, you know, we're not going to be able to make up much ground in the straights with all of this damage, or in the corners with our front wing damage. So after deciding not to pit the lap before and push one more lap out of this front wing, we will confirm to our pit box that we will be boxing this lap to fix that damage, and hoping that we'll be able to make up some ground going forward. Potentially a safety car will come out and allow us to, you know, try and make best of the situation. As it's funny, as we actually get a bit of a good run coming out of that tight uphill chicane coming back towards Zhou Guanyu, I actually end up asking, coming down this back straight, how the vehicle condition is, wondering if we could potentially push this another lap, as we are currently making up ground on Zhou as well as Daniel Ricciardo in front, as I'm sure Zhou is also quite interested. And we actually elect not to pit. We actually make a bit of a hesitation deciding whether or not we were actually going to pit on the inside, and that actually will probably end up costing us this position in the long run, just because in that moment we had a bit of an opportunity to kind of cut across finally and, you know, really try and make the long run decision to pit. But unfortunately we hesitate a little too long, and that hesitation allows Zhou Guanyu to jump out to quite a larger lead on us, as we're kind of kicking ourselves, I'm sure, both on the pit wall as well as in the car, at potentially getting a better run on this end lap. But finally, we do confirm on this lap we will be coming in undeterred by this damage, and finally having that moment of clarity provided by that hesitation near the pit entry, that we do need to get in. We know we're going to need extraordinary luck to catch Zhou Guanyu or Daniel Ricciardo in this, as this will surely do it, as that lack of downforce truly, and as well as the lack of tire grip, we absolutely obliterate our front wing on the back of Zhou Guanyu. And at this point we're almost feeling bad that our miscalculations and, you know, our mistakes are really maybe costing Zhou also more of a shot to move up as well. And so at this point Daniel Ricciardo actually slows. What is happening to the McLaren, as he ends up dropping all the way back, and it actually allows us to get a good run on Zhou Guanyu. What is happening to the McLaren? What just happened in this Miami Grand Prix, as we get a full safety car? Is Sebastian Vettel also out? and we actually end up pitting for free under a safety car. Oh my goodness, what is this luck? As Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel both slow down in that third sector, we actually get a free pit stop under the safety car to fix both the front wing damage as well as getting those new tires on for these last 18 laps of this race. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I've seen a luckier position to be in as we're coming around the final corners before the pit wall. We fit a full-fledged safety car. Oh my goodness. At this point, we are thinking whatever greater powers there might be that we are providing an opportunity to make something happen, as well as not sacrificing our entire race due to a couple of mistakes. And by mistakes, I mean running into the back of Zhou Guanyu. As we move ahead to lap 13, the safety car will be coming in. We currently still remain behind Zhou, even though we passed him on this back straight. The longer pit stop of having to fix our front wing allows him back through as we remain in P15, which is probably a bit of a blessing on these cold, hard tires that are so hard to warm up on a safety car lap. We actually get a pretty poor jump on the rest of the field as we re-begin our 14th lap of this Grand Prix. 15 laps remain, and we will be making a big push to try and secure the best position possible, especially since everyone has been bunched up by the safety car, and we finally have an opportunity to potentially eye not just P14 or 13, but potentially something better as well. So as this first safety car lap is continuing, we are hounding Zhou Guanyu as we are trying our best to warm up these tires, not make any big mistakes as we had earlier in the race, and really just trying to take advantage of our fresh wing, our fresh tires, and really just making a big push. As we see in front of Zhou Guanyu, actually Alex Albon ends up getting ahead of Fernando Alonso, so now Alonso sitting in P13, or sorry, Albon actually currently sitting in P16, Alonso in P13. Reading comprehension, kids, stay in school. And Daniel Ricciardo behind Albon down in P17, so we don't have to worry about the McLaren being in front of us, as for whatever reason he ended up slowing severely down this back straight for some reason. It would have been nice to get some kind of confirmation on what exactly happened with him, but he ended up giving up the position basically for free, and luckily we find ourselves up ahead of the McLaren as we continue moving forward. Now, something we also need to keep in mind is not only fighting Zhou in front of us, but keeping Alex Albon at bay behind us, as that Williams car compared to us in the car, as well as this driver's skill level, we really have to keep that in mind, that, you know, we're not just fighting ahead as a load of drivers end up pitting. That actually distracts us just enough to let Albon through, as well as Daniel Ricciardo getting a good little peek towards the inside as we kind of box him out. We were distracted severely by what was 5 or 6 cars entering the pits, presumably for damage or tires, who knows, and we actually get so late on the brakes. We run very wide, it allows Albon through, and we currently find ourselves in P10, chasing a Williams for points, as well as holding off a McLaren and Daniel Ricciardo, as we are now looking at 14 laps between us and our second points finish of the season. What just happened? It was absolutely insane. I would love to know if it was tires or damage or a bit of both that caused 5 or 6 cars to pit at the end of the first safety car lap. What a change of luck. You know, we mentioned at the beginning that a safety car could really turn it around as we were planning to pit, and we never could have believed it would affect it quite like this, as we go from battling for P15 to potentially battling for points in the Miami Grand Prix, our first visit to the United States as a team in Formula One. This is an incredible turn of events, especially after the weekend we had last week in Imola, where Max Verstappen absolutely ended our weekend and our first visit to Imola in the wet. We turn around, come to Miami, and potentially be looking at points, which for a young team like us, we will take every opportunity. We make sure to get early on the brakes coming into turn 1 as we move forward just a little bit. We get a bit of a wide run on here, and we actually take a look towards the idea of taking Alex Albon here down the straight. We go a bit wide to try and get a better exit, but unfortunately Albon gets a decent exit himself, and we are unable to kind of make the run we were really looking for. So as we continue down lap 17, we are continuing to try and take a look and see if we can get by this Williams of Alex Albon as we get very late on the brakes. Give him a little bump in the back. Again, probably a bit too aggressive, and probably definitely a driver's skill issue that we got away with. We give Albon a little bit of a bump draft, in which I'm sure he will definitely not appreciate as much as we do running now in P9, as we once again find ourselves behind Zhou Guanyu and Lewis Hamilton actually above him in P7. Albon currently outside of DRS from us, which is probably a good thing, because who's to say what kind of send he would make on us after we give him and essentially punt him through the corner, as Max Verstappen ends up out of the Miami GP. Whoa, what is happening in Miami today? The results that are coming out from retirements and DNFs in this race are absolutely insane, as we now find ourselves running in P7 in the Miami Grand Prix, which would end up being our best result to date. And what is happening, as unfortunately Zhou Guanyu kind of just gets away from us here, almost 1 3/4 seconds ahead of us. We really need to try and rein that in, as Daniel Ricciardo ends up overtaking Alex Albon in the Williams behind us in P8, and will then be making his march towards us to try and continue to move up the board. But this race has really turned on its head, as I would say the one challenger to Charles Leclerc and his fight for the World Drivers' Championship, but the Ferrari are currently running both near the top of the World Drivers' Championships themselves, and a Max Verstappen DNF is not something that they could afford. And so once again, the Red Bull relying on Checo Perez to bring home as many points as possible in this season so far, where Ferrari has absolutely seemed dominant. But it also inadvertently hands us a position, as we kind of take a peek at our current condition of the car. That underbody is still probably causing us more issues than we can really understand, as Ricciardo ends up taking us down the straight in his superior McLaren. But we really thought about sending one up the inside, but at this point, with only coming up on 10 laps remaining, we're really settling back into that mindset of we really need to think long term here, and we can't afford to be sending one up the inside, taking more damage than necessary, and potentially compromising the rest of our race and our position just to try and send one back up the inside on Daniel Ricciardo as he overtook us in his McLaren. So moving ahead to lap 22 here, nothing really changed, except Carlos Sainz ended up pitting, I believe, once again for more damage. Unfortunate for him, as he currently still holds on to the fastest lap, and he will be attempting to once again march back up the field. And especially now that he is on those fresh hard tires, even though they might be the hards, having my tires, which are at this point running on 10 plus laps, even fresh cold hard tires will speed up much faster than our older hard tires. So once again, we will be keeping an eye on that gap between us and the Ferrari, but we are continuing to chase Daniel Ricciardo and Zhou Guanyu down this back straight up the little mini uphill chicane, as we get a decent run out of this final corner towards the straight. We will get DRS on Danny Rick, but those two, the Alpha and the McLaren, without the underbody damage that we are currently suffering, will just run away from us on the straight. DRS will help a little bit, but as we keep an eye on that upper left corner, we get late on the brakes, and actually a little too late on the brakes, is that underbody damage just really holding us back. We have to once again make the hard decision to keep out on all of our current issues as we try and nurse these tires home for another 6 laps, a damaged front wing, damaged underbody, and we are doing our best to try and keep up with a fairly healthy McLaren and Alfa Romeo, with a Ferrari hounding us in not but 5 or 6 turns, cut the deficit between us over half to under a second, as Carlos Sainz will surely be looking to getting around us and to continue his march back up the order, and hopefully to regain some of his positions he seemed to have lost due to damage. But as we come down this back stretch, he will absolutely close the gap even further, and will absolutely be taking us down this back stretch in sector 2 and 3, which once again is fine. We understand that our fight is not with Ferrari, so he'll actually take one up the inside on us here. We will give him plenty of space. And once again, at this point, we are hoping with the damage that we had sustained that he will maybe potentially hold up Daniel Ricciardo or Zhou Guanyu a little bit. But with this back straight and the power of this Ferrari power unit, I absolutely expect him to just take these two fairly easily, and unfortunately they will not get held up too much. We do get DRS off of Carlos. Thankfully, he will do us that one favor as we come down this back stretch heading towards the completion of lap 23. We get a bit of actually managed to hit our stopping point this time, so no more damage for us, but the damage I think is really starting to show itself as we try and limp home essentially in this one, as Alex Albon, currently sitting a little over 2.25 seconds away from us behind, will absolutely be looking to make a march on our damaged states, as we really would be very limited amount of things we could do to hold him off, and we're trying to chase down Zhou Guanyu once again, who currently sits just far enough away to deny us DRS. We really need to close that gap once again, else we really could be sitting ducks for, even at this point, Lando Norris, who actually overtook Alex Albon, who actually has dropped off quite a bit, and we actually find ourselves looking at Lando Norris and Esteban Ocon currently behind us. Norris in P10, Ocon in P11, and Norris in that McLaren looks much faster than the Williams of Albon. As we come down the stretch of lap 29, we are trying to hold off one McLaren, and at this point we are trying to just secure our position in P9 as Charles Leclerc comes home to win the Miami Grand Prix. And at this point we are begging for the checkered flag, because Norris will absolutely have us, and if we let him get into DRS on this back straight, that would probably do it for us. But thankfully we hold him off just enough, as these uneventful final few laps, we are unable to make the push with the damage to Zhou Guanyu or Daniel Ricciardo ahead of us, but we did enough to hold off the rest of the field, as we will come home around the final few bends to finish the Miami Grand Prix in P9, securing our second points finish of the season, our first points finish in the United States. And we are absolutely going to be celebrating this evening as we also take home driver of the day. I would hope so, starting in P22, moving all the way up into a points finish. What a day, what a weekend. It had everything. It had safety cars, it had virtual safety cars, and it had a lot of positions surrendered through damage or strategy. So our team, Mr. Dakota Zero Racing, gets its second points finish of the season, and we will be celebrating just as much as Charles Leclerc, who comes home to win the Miami Grand Prix, with it looked like Sergio Perez taking home third, and one of the Mercedes ends up coming home in P2. It looks like we will find out which one that is here momentarily, but it is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc continuing to pull away in this World Drivers' Championship, thankfully not having to experience much or any of the unfortunate deeds of what happening in real life, but in this alternate F1 universe, Charles Leclerc is absolutely running away with the beginning part of this season, as we finish up round 5 with another Ferrari win. And it's actually George Russell who comes home in P2 for Mercedes. Congratulations to George on his podium, as well as Sergio Perez. Taking a look at our final standings, we actually see Alex Albon ended up falling all the way to P12, and we end up finishing in P9 with Zhou Guanyu and Daniel Ricciardo, who had been in front of us most of the day. Unfortunately, Carlos Sainz, unable to make up much more ground after passing us, finishes in P6, and Fernando Alonso in P5, and Hamilton actually ends up coming home in P4. So a great day for the Mercedes, a great day for us. We actually do not, I believe we take a look and see where Enzo ended up finishing, moving up a few positions into finish actually P17. So another solid outing for our teammates, who ends up in P17, showing that, slow and steady improvements for sure, but we definitely will be looking to give him a better car, and hopefully he'll be able to start move up the final leaderboards as well. So As we come to a close in this Miami Grand Prix, we will come away with plenty of momentum and plenty to celebrate, as our first outing in the United States yields points, a driver of the day, and non-stop action from start to finish. One thing we really need to keep working on is not giving ourselves damage too early in the race that really just compromises the entire rest of our day. It's something that we need to continue to work on, but nonetheless, it is something we will be working on as we take a look at our rivalry breakdown with Pierre Gasly, who actually ends up taking more points from us than, even though we did end up finishing higher up. But we see that both I and Enzo end up hitting level 6 acclaim, and we get a huge jump on our team acclaim, as well as we finished our first sponsor challenge with Pianite and end up coming away with a fair amount of money. So that will do it for this one. I will see you guys next week for Barcelona.